Today we're talking about the history of depopulation as an actionable item of what we can do to reform our communities on our own. So thank you for once again coming back to the Black Honor Movement. We are a YouTube channel and a Facebook group. Today, we have a sponsor. So we'll get to the sponsor a little bit later in the video, but let's just hop right in, right? So the history of depopulation is a touchy topic, but it's very important that those that have ears let us hear, and that those that have eyes let us pay attention and see what's going on. So again, you guys are awesome. Thanks for the love that you've been showing the Black Honor Movement on YouTube. And it seems like we'll have some good steam on Facebook as we continue to build the content. But go ahead and hit that like button, that share button, that subscription button, and we'll jump right in. So today I'm hosting examples of how the history of depopulation is nothing new. The history of mass death is nothing new. I know that's a pretty dark topic, but, you know, it's really not if you know how to protect yourself against it. It's really not if you want to fight things like this. And this channel, we're a group of people that like fighting problems like this, right? The first example that comes to mind of the history of depopulation is 1763, and that would be the French Indian War, right? So that's what we'll dive into right now. The French Indian War was something that we should all pay attention to, because during the time you had people that acted like they had a sense of goodwill during the cold seasons, and really they had smallpox in a blanket. So the British during the French the British during the French and Indian War, let's talk about them real quick. So what we learned from the British during the French and Indian War is the Native Americans, they greatly outnumbered the British and were suspected of being on the side of the French. And as an act of goodwill, the British gave them they gave them blankets to the Indians, but the Native Americans' blankets came from hospitals that were treated for smallpox victims, and consequently, smallpox raged through the community of the Native Americans and devastated their numbers. And the History Channel, that it proves this argument, right? It definitely proves this argument. So we have something we need to pay attention to. Secondly, if we look at 1814, Andrew Jackson. Does anybody know where Andrew Jackson is commonly seen on? I'll give you 3 seconds. The $20 bill, right? So he supervised the mutilation of 800 or more Creek Indians, Creek Native Americans, especially as the history, the American history .edu shows. He foresaw the mutilation of these bodies, men, women, children, and his troops massacred them, right? They cut off their noses to count and preserve the records of the dead. They sliced strips along these people's flesh to tan and burn in the brittle rinds. So we look over at the CDC. Here's another example of mass depopulation. Now, I'm not saying that this has anything to do with someone forcing this on other people. When I'm looking at the CDC, that's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm trying to show is on the CDC, the Spanish flu, for those that remember the Spanish flu, it broke out in 1918 to 1919. But the Spanish flu, it killed over 20 million people worldwide and over 500,000 people in the United States of America. Again, the Spanish flu. So for those that are tuning into the live, we're taking a look at examples of depopulation, right? Another example of depopulation that I was just looking at was Margaret Sanger, right? When we take a look at Margaret Sanger, this lady is awful. But before we get into Margaret Sanger, let's talk about something real quick. We're talking about the sponsor of today's show. The sponsor of today's show is Life Cleanse Cleaning. Do you need your home clean? Do you need your house clean in Dallas, Texas? Stop by Life Cleanse Cleaning. They have a Facebook page. You can like the Facebook page. You can take advantage of the Book Now tab and book yourself a cleaning. But it'd be really awesome if you guys stop by Life Cleanse Cleaning. So I wanted to make sure that we highlight our sponsor of today's show. Visit lifecleansecleaning.com today and book a cleaning. Put in your details and they will get it started for you. All right. So going over to Margaret Sanger, as we were talking about, the reason why I have such a disdain for this lady is because she definitely knows how to captivate the mind of the black woman, in my opinion, right? She knows how to captivate the mind of the black woman. So when we take a look at her Negro project. Now, when did she do this Negro project? For those that want to do their own research, I definitely recommend you do your own research. She did the Negro project in 1939, right? That's when she organized her Negro project. Now, the Negro project was a program designed to eliminate members of society who she believed were that of an inferior race, right? She justified her proposal by articles that she wrote, right? By publications that she printed, and one of them she said, the masses of the Negroes, particularly in the South. Now, see if you can find the connections between how they speak about us then, post-slavery, to how they talk about us now. But she said, particularly in the South, still breed carelessly and disastrously, with the result that increase among Negroes, even more than among whites. It's from that portion of the population least intelligent and fit. This is the way they talk about us today, right? Has anybody watched Bill Gates talk at a TED Talk? Has anybody watched these super elitists talk at a university? This is the way they talk today. Not only that, right? So this is the founder of Planned Parenthood. This is the founder of Planned Parenthood. But more on that later. Let's look at another example of how this is an actionable item when we choose to say no, right? When we choose to say no, oh, I forgot to say I'm wearing a Life Cleanse t-shirt for those that can't see. Look at that. Wearing the Life Cleanse t-shirt. So again, go to lifecleansecleaning.com. So, I'm showing example after example after example, trying to respect everybody's time, trying to keep it short to show you that we can connect the dots here. We can connect the dots here. Not only can we connect the dots, but this is premeditated systems. This is premeditated, systematic, intentional, and deliberate actions amongst a society that they either deem inferior, or they want to control in population, or that they fear will outgrow or overthrow their society and their population, right? So moving on to our next example of harsh treatment of society, we take a look at this article published by the National Library of Medicine. What was going on with the National Library of Medicine in 1940? Well, 400 prisoners in Chicago were infected with malaria in order to study the effects of new and experimental drugs to help combat the disease. Nazi doctors that were on trial during the Nuremberg trials, they cited this American study to help defend their own actions during the Holocaust. So we have doctors in Nazi Germany citing what's going on in America. And it brings me to that conversation that when Putin was interviewed at I think it was the G7 summit, and he was like, I think someone was asking him about, what do you have to say about the media and various news what's the word for them? News anchors, journalists. What do you have to say about journalists being abducted and never seen again? He said, well, I've heard the allegations that our nation has something to do with abducting journalists outside of ongoing investigations. And this is not me siding with him at all. But he said, take a look at America and how they treat their entire black population. This guy said this about 7 years ago. I think this was, I'm sorry, not 7 years ago, about 3 years ago. I think it was right after 2017, though. But look at how other nations cite America when it comes to inhumane treatment of their own population. But yeah, 400 prisoners in Chicago were infected with malaria to find out the effects of malaria. I believe they were on death row. I can't confirm that, but I believe they were on death row, which is why they could possibly, in their minds, think to justify such an inhumane act. But it's no justification for actions like that. All right, let's move on to the next discovery of depopulation throughout the U.S. And this is so frustrating as a parent and as someone who not too long ago was a young man himself. I mean, I'm 28 years old now. I don't think I'm very old, but if you subtract 15 years from my life, let's take a look at what was happening to the youth around May 1974. Well, in 1972, actually, 1974, the publication came out, but in 1972, it was discovered that black children as young as the age of 5 were given psychosurgery performed on them at the University of Mississippi in Jackson in order to control hyperactive and aggressive behavior. That's insulting. Hyperactive and aggressive behavior. So young children as young children as young as the age of 5 were given psychosurgery. Their brains were being implanted with electrodes that were heated up to melt the areas of the brain that regulated emotion and intellect. They said when we first opposed these experiments and eventually stopped them, we did so despite resistance from the organization's psychiatry and research community. Hey, listen, regardless of who over there thinks they saved these children, results show they lobotomized the youth in Mississippi. I grew up in Tennessee. That's right next to Mississippi. They lobotomized the youth. Think about that. What's going on? Now, we spoke about Margaret Sanger, but I wanted to touch on something presented by the Gutenberg.org, right? And if you look at what Margaret Sanger wrote, right, in 1921, she founded American Birth Control League, and she wrote the pivot of civilization, in which she called for the elimination of human weeds for the cessation of charity, because it prolongs the lives of the unfit, for the segregation of morons, misfits, and the maladjusted, for the sterilizations of genetically inferior races. This is what the founder of Planned Parenthood thinks about us, right? And in the 1930s, Margaret Sanger, she also published Birth Control Review. Look that up, 1930s Birth Control Review. And in that magazine, she openly supported for the Inficated program promoted by Nazi Germany, which championed Adolf Hitler's goal of Aryan white supremacy race. In years prior to World War II, Margaret Sanger, she also commissioned Ernest Rudin, a member of the Nazi Germany party and director of the German medical experimentation programs, to serve as an advisor on her organization, right? And this is what it is today. So let's just take a quick look at Planned Parenthood's website. And as you can see, it pulls at all of the emotional strings of our women. Abortion access, birth control, healthcare equity, attacks on Planned Parenthood. Attacks on Planned Parenthood. You don't say. Wow, state attacks. You're being attacked by the state. Sexual assault, federal courts, voting rights. It just pulls at the I just get frustrated looking at the website, right? It pulls at the emotional cords of our women in our community. And then you ask, I remember growing up and hearing as a teenager, seeing pictures of abortions, and then asking young women, what do you think about it? If I had to, and we think about that, well, let's say that for later. But when we close out, we'll show the connection between offering our children to a better life and what has happened not too long ago. When we look at their claims to take the Earth's population from 8 billion people to 500 million, though, one has to say that abortion, birth control, things like that have a lot to do with it. And don't take it as an attack on women, because they have contraceptives for men too. I mean, men can get their, I don't know what it's called because I'm not letting them do that to my nuts. But men can let them do that to them, right? It is your body and it is your choice. You're absolutely right about that. But it's not happening to me. It's not happening to me. But if you look at the Planned Parenthood Center of Syracuse, New York, right? Planned Parenthood Federation of America is an organization that was set up to accomplish several objectives throughout the community: to provide leadership, right? To make an effective means of voluntary fertility regulation, including contraceptives, abortion, sterilization, infertility services, availability, and full accessibility to all central elements of the reproductive health care society, which is fair, right? But how they promote it, in my opinion, is wrong, and its connections to how they promote it, and the connections are not new, and that's what we'll get into a little bit later. Though let's keep discovering what we're looking at, right? Let's keep discovering what we're looking at. But so when you look at Planned Parenthood, let's take a look at local officials, and there we go, local organizations, right? But they have a library of over 5,000 abortion, sterilization, and population control. I'm sorry, not over 5,000, but about 900 centers, and it maintains a volume library of over 5,000. So I wanted to make sure that I clarified that. But we spoke about the some of the leaders that were brought over from various communists, and not only that, but just inhumane parties. But we take a look at one of the signed presidents was Alan Gutmacher. Look him up. He signed the Humanist Manifesto, and the president Faye Waddleson was awarded Humanist of the Year in 1987. Both of them have open disregards for Christian faith or biblical faith. So those that know who they are, these people have a disregard for your belief systems, right? Not only that, we spoke about them wanting to make an effective means of voluntary fertility regulations, but also stimulating and sponsoring relevant biomedical, socioeconomic, and demographic research, developing appropriate information, education, and training, right? What we can see from this website, programs to increase the knowledge about human reproduction and sexuality, and standing against not fertility, but increasing the birth rate by voluntary fertility regulations, right? But the relationship between population control and abortion is not that far off. Again, when we take a look at the Georgia Guidestones, right? When we look up the Georgia Guidestones, let me see if I can show you a picture of the Georgia Guidestones. Georgia, I know I spelled it. Stones. Georgia Rome. I have fat fingers, but anyway, you take a look at the Georgia Guidestones. These people write on these Guidestones their plans to decrease Earth's population, right? If they want to bring Earth's population down to 500 million, wouldn't one think a lifestyle that can't reproduce would contribute to it? Voluntary abortion, attacks on the immune system, or even homosexuality. Options in life that do not procreate life. Wouldn't one conclude that this would help these people? I mean, we can claim conspiracy all we want, but I don't know a quote unquote conspiracy theorist in the middle of nowhere building monuments that look like something out of a Harry Potter movie or a Hunger Games movie. I don't know any conspiracy theorists doing this on their own. And when you do your research, you'll see that this has been up for a while. This is nothing new. This has been out for a while, right? Anyway, moving on. I want to highlight this guy because I think he's a hero, right? This guy, he wasn't a doctor. Again, speaking about your quote unquote conspiracy theories, right? This guy wasn't a doctor at all. Yet, what is he known for? He's known for a carnival attraction that saved thousands of premature babies' lives. And again, he wasn't a doctor. Now, my child was born at 7 months old. Back then, they would have offed my child. Back then. Just because he was born preterm. However, this guy's exhibit, he showed healthy, maturing babies, maturing into full healthy lives, and they were born premature. Comment in the below if you guys were born prematurely yourself. And this is presented by the Smithsonian Magazine. So one thing you'll know about the Black Honor Movement is we always present credible sources. We don't believe in presenting tinfoil sources. We present everything that's credible. I'm here to make you think. That's all I'm here to do. I'm here to make you think. So let's touch on the spiritual side, right? So we spoke about depopulation and we spoke about abortion as well. However, I want to dive more into the spiritual nature and motivation that will make someone sacrifice their child for any cause. Because we see right here, they're telling us that the issue is, okay, sexual assault. But we know that birth, population from sexual assault, population from the R word is very low. It's very low. I mean, most people are not born from R, right? So let's think about that. But is there a connection with ancient deity worships, however, and child sacrifice? Is there a connection between ancient deity worship and child SA? Let's find out. Let's take a look at what the Britannica has to say about it. Who is Moloch? Moloch, or Molech, is a Canaanite African. A Canaanite is African, right? So it's an African deity associated in biblical sources with the practice of child sacrifice, right? But what does the Bible have to say about that? We take a look at all throughout the Bible. It's multiple examples that there were certain tribes, there were certain people, there were certain groups that practiced this. And even out of desperation, the Israelite population, a portion of them practiced this. And we'll take a look at that. But in Leviticus 18:21, it says, "You shall not give any of your children to devote them by fire to Moloch, so profane the name of your God." We are clearly given, whether you believe you're, as a black person, an Israelite or not. If you sell, I'm gonna put it where the ghost can get it. If you believe that as a Christian, you're supposed to celebrate Easter and Christmas because that's what God wants you to do, then you should not partake in passing your children through the fire of Moloch. That's the point we're trying to drive home. That's yet another actionable item. We got educated, right? We shouldn't pass our children through the fire of Moloch. No one's going to stop you in America. They're allowing you to do that. And no one's going to stop you. But we should not partake in that. Because passing them through, sacrificing them is exactly what we're doing. Oh, girl, you too young to have a child. You ain't even made it through college. That guy beating on you. Leave him. Exit him out the picture. Use the law to protect yourself. But do we have to pass our children through the fire of Moloch? That's what we're talking about. Because that's definitely what it is, right? And we see through history that our people partook in that themselves, right? And also in 2 Kings 10, it stated that one of the practices in which Josiah put a stop to was the sacrificing children to Moloch, and that the place where this form of worship was being practiced was in Tophet, which translates to the valley of children of Hinnom. So this statement is confirmed by Jeremiah 35, right, from 2 Kings. Let me see. I'm trying to see where I saw it at. But anyway. Yeah, so it looks like it was introduced during the reign of Manasseh, but the impression was left during a uncritical reading of the passage of Moloch writing, right? As this shows, but it's the rites of child sacrifice that was introduced from Ammon during the 7th century BC and introduced during the reign of Manasseh. So throughout different times, it was Canaanite worship that was introduced to the Israelite population. But the motives for child sacrifice, like when you read it right here, it says the motives for these sacrifices is not far to seek. It's given at Micah, in Micah. Verse 7, it says, "Shall I give my firstborn for my transgressions, the fruit of my body for sin of my soul? In the midst of disasters that were befallen men of the nation." I don't believe that part about Yahweh, right? But they would find any price that they could pay, even their own children. But if you look at that, right, from the Jewish Encyclopedia.com, right? If they were thinking about what is the price I could pay to recompense my sin, if I give you my child, will it take my sin, right? If you think about that and think about what's going on today, people are saying, I need to get my degree. Shall I give you the child of my stomach? Come on. We talk about Black Lives Matter. We got to show Black Lives Matter. That's why it's a Black honor movement. Our actions have to be honorable. Our actions have to stand up with what we say we believe in. And my friends, if you believe in contributing to the demise of our own bloodline, of our own children, of our own youth, then I don't know what to tell you. We need to repent. This is some serious stuff. So I just wanted to make sure I brought that out to you guys. I always love kicking it with you. Thank you again for staying tuned to the Black Honor Movement. Make sure you're hitting that like button. Make sure you're hitting that share button, that subscription button. And yeah, I'm out, man. I'm out. But this is real. Let's take it serious. And let's make it, let's give it our best shot. All right. I love y'all. Stay tuned. I'll see y'all later.